The subcommittee will come to order. I'd like to thank our distinguished witnesses, Assistant Secretary of State Daniel Russell and Assistant Administrator for USAID Jonathan Stivers for being here this afternoon. We called this hearing to assess U.S. foreign assistance to East Asia and the Pacific for fiscal year 2016. This is a critical topic because it's clear that the future of the United States is inextricably linked with East Asia. The region encompasses many of the greatest opportunities for our country. What remains to be seen is what shape this future will take, because some of our greatest strategic challenges also come from East Asia. For example, the United States should assist in the peaceful resolution of maritime disputes and military buildup in the South China Sea, or we risk tensions erupting into kinetic conflict. The United States must engage in new trading relationship with burgeoning regional powers in Asia through the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or we risk markets could remain restricted to our businesses. The United States must retain its leading role in ensuring the peaceful sharing of land, sea, air, and cyberspace, or we risk faltering, paving the way for less savory alternatives such as the dominance of authoritarian Chinese rules and norms. As a Pacific power, the United States must seek positive outcomes for these challenges and others. We also need to balance these challenges abroad with our financial constraints at home, which will require allocating U.S. funds efficiently and effectively. The Administration initially proposed a rebalance to Asia as a centerpiece of its foreign policy. However, the follow-through we've seen on the rebalance, or the pivot, has not reached its full potential. Last week I spoke at an event with Senator McCain, and he observed that we had not yet truly pivoted. I agree. The attention given to East Asia and the Pacific by the Administration does not seem to be indicative of a concerted effort. In FY 2015, the East Asia Bureau's budget is the second smallest of any of the State's regional bureaus. If we're ever to truly rebalance, the effective allocation of foreign aid for the region, rather than the sheer amount we spend, must be the critical factor for our foreign aid spending in the Asia-Pacific. I'm eager to hear from our distinguished witnesses today about their respective efforts on this issue. In China, we're supporting sustainable development, environmental conservation, and cultural preservation initiatives in Tibetan areas, as well as HIV/AIDS programs, international narcotics control and law enforcement, and democracy programs. Over the last few years, we've seen reduced funding for democracy, human rights, and rule of law programs, which I'm concerned about because of increased levels of repression from the Xi administration, which puts at risk our efforts in these areas. The controls and limits on the freedom of expression have indicated that the Chinese government intends to rule by law rather than uphold the rule of law. Moving to Southeast Asia, I have concerns about countries in the lower Mekong region, which includes Burma, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam. I see that this year's budget request for lower Mekong initiative is nearly 20% lower than last year's. This broad initiative supports aid programs in education, the environment, health, food security, and infrastructure. And I'd be very interested to hear the reasoning behind its de-emphasis in this year's budget. I'm particularly interested to hear the reasoning, to hear the witnesses' views on whether this reduction will constrain the U.S. presence in the lower Mekong, especially now in light of China's aggressive infrastructure investments in the region and the U.S.'s exploration of closer relations with nations such as Vietnam. This year's budget requests reflect an increase in involvement with Vietnam, which is a forward-looking decision. Though our current efforts for Vietnam are still focused on disease control and development, we're also working towards the U.S.-Vietnam relationship of the future by helping to improve governance, strengthen civil society, improve human rights conditions, and to promote Vietnam's involvement in the TPP. Our aim should be continuing to support Vietnam's transformation to become a more responsible and inclusive partner. I look forward to discussing these priorities with Vietnam when I travel to the region in just a couple of weeks. I'm pleased to see that this year's budget request places significant emphasis on enhancing the defense capabilities of Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines through foreign military financing as well as training and anti-terror programs. We've had a long-standing and productive counterterror cooperation with Indonesia, and helping the world's largest Muslim majority nation to deal with radicalism should continue to be a top priority. Vietnam and the Philippines, as claimants in the South China Sea, face heightened risk of state-to-state conflict due to China's aggressive island building in disputed waters. So the security emphasis we see for these two nations in this year's request is welcome also. President Reagan once said, "We can't help everyone, but we can help someone." Our mission here today is to hold a dialogue about which someones to help. And it's a truly exciting and daunting time to have these kinds of conversations because the East Asia Pacific presents colossal opportunities and vexing challenges. I give my sincere thanks to my colleagues today and our witnesses for joining me in this conversation today, and I turn the time over to Mr. Lowenthal for any opening statements he might have.